Airport Authority Board meeting. We appreciate your interest in the airport and the support that your attendance suggests. We'll begin by asking for an approval of the minutes from the November meeting.
I reviewed those, and I would move approval of the November 7th minutes.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. We approve the minutes from the November 7th meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's time for election for a board chair. Are there nominations?
And I am just amazed at John Kerr and what he has done for the airport over the years. He has been chair of the board for so long, and he spends a lot of time out there. And I think we need to give him a little bit of a break. But we still need his institutional memory to help. You know, the county really runs the airport, so I would propose that I'd nominate John to be vice chair and David Zook to be the chair. Again, with all these kind of changes coming to the airport that we're implementing, where the county actually runs the airport and the staff reports to the county. That would be my suggestion if the board's interested, is to, so I would nominate David Zook as chair, and I would nominate John Kerr as vice chair.
Are there other nominations? Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nominations don't need a second.
Oh, okay. And again, a huge thanks to John for what he has done for so many years and will continue to do, and will kind of guide us all and guide David and guide Bob, and because again, he has more hands-on knowledge than I think anyone out there.
Thank you. Thank you, John, and thank you for those kind comments, Mayor, and I would like to echo those. I have really appreciated in the past 4 years that I've served on the board here, the expertise, the knowledge, the history. Even just within the past couple of weeks, we've had a few meetings, and thankfully John was there to be able to tell us what the FAA regulations said and what the history was on different issues. And I just really appreciate his willingness to serve, his expertise in so many different areas. Thank you so much for your many years of service chairing, and thank you for being willing to serve as my vice chair and to help me continue to move this board forward. With that being said, we'll move forward to the next item on our agenda, which is item 2C, and that's the appointment of the Logan City and Cache County Economic Development Directors as ex officio board members. In reviewing the bylaws to our Airport Authority Board, we see that it was anticipated that the economic development directors from Logan City and Cache County would be able to serve as ex officio members of this board, which means they can participate. Ex officio, I believe, means that they're not going to have the ability to vote, but they can participate in our discussions and provide support to us. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce the Cache County Economic Development Director, Sean Milne. And Sean, if you'd come up here and join us on the dais, we've got several seats up here. Sean serves as our Economic Development Director for Cache County. He actually serves in that role for the 3-county region with Box Elder and Rich County as well. And I have had and asked Sean to come and participate and attend these meetings, and he's been one of my staff support people on this on the airport for the past 4 years as well, because he does thankfully have a significant amount of experience with airports, and in his previous roles as elected official and experience at the state level. He's been involved in a lot of legislation related to airports and aviation, and been involved with some other aviation-related groups around the state in leadership roles even. So I'm excited to have him be in a little bit more active of a role with our board, and thank you for your willingness to serve, Sean.
Thank you, board members, appreciate it.
And Mayor, would you like to introduce your?
I would, and if anyone's wondering just sort of where this is located, it's in the interlocal agreement on page 7 that it specifies the city and county economic development director. So Kirk Jensen is the Logan City Economic Development Director. Again, you're welcome to come up and join us as well, Kirk. He has just a great deal of experience with economic development, has worked with some of the various players at the airport. So again, just as we are kind of implementing a new phase, we're trying to do some new things, just make sure we take care of some things. So we'd like, again, a little bit of extra bandwidth to do that. So we appreciate their willingness to help us out.
You bet.
Thank you to both of you. Appreciate your willingness to serve and look forward to your input. And with that being said, I want you to know that we anticipate that you would participate just like the rest of us board members, other than, unfortunately, you can't vote, but we look forward to the rest of your input.
Yeah, you can share your opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and any other thoughts on that? If not, we'll move forward then to number 3 on our agenda, which is our manager's report. Bob.
Good morning and Happy New Year. Got a couple things to discuss today. So as the year came to an end, we identified some money that had gone unused, and we have a purchase order in place so we can buy that FOD mat. FOD is foreign object debris, gravel, small parts, nuts, bolts that fall out onto the taxi lanes, taxiways, runways. So we've been able to order this FOD mat that you pull behind a vehicle that picks up this debris. Instead of being out there with a broom and a shovel and all these things, we can just drive the truck around or the Jeep around and pull these things, just pick these things up and be better at having a clean surface. So that's something that we've been able to do. Also, as you drive around the airport, you see a lot of little covers that have lights inside, down the taxiways, down the runways, and the birds out there like to sit there and have their meal and, of course, make a mess on the lights. So we've bought a pressure washer. We bought those. I think John and Casey came up with the idea to buy those dish racks that have the glasses in them. And so we've bought those, and so we're going to be swapping out and cleaning those lens tops incrementally to keep keep them clean and keep them so they shine the way they're supposed to. We've also, with some year-end money, have been able to order a PAPI digital aiming device kit. So the PAPI is a lighting system as you're coming in on final approach on both ends of the runway. We've had discussions about moving this control panel before, but the actual light has to be directed at a certain angle to be certified, and we've ordered a device that helps us measure where we're at on that. You know, if you're on a 3-degree plane coming in on final, okay, there it is. It's where it's supposed to be. So the next item, I got a phone call. It's probably been about 6 weeks ago, but we didn't have our last meeting. I got a phone call from the FAA FSDO, Flight Standard District Office, which is in Salt Lake City. And it was an inspector. So this is someone who is investigating an incident, and he didn't want to talk to me about the incident. He wanted to talk to me about, you're allowing paragliders to operate at that airport? And I mentioned, well, I didn't think that I had the ability to restrict anybody from operating here. And he says, well, that's true. However, you're so busy up there, you need to restrict it. And so he kind of left me with the impression that day that I needed to restrict paragliders. And so that was where I made some phone calls and said, hey guys, sorry you can't come now. He called me the next day and he said, actually, we've had more discussions at the FSDO among the other inspectors, and we're going to take it out of your hands. So as the airport, we don't have the ability to restrict or to approve paragliders. He says, everybody in a paraglider needs to call the ARTC, Air Route Traffic Control Center. Since your airport is overlaid by controlled airspace, it's starting at 700 feet, he says, they need to call each time they fly or want to fly and get approval from Air Route Traffic Control Center. I said, how likely are they to get that approval? And he says, not likely. So that's where we're at with paragliders. And so just so the board knows, if you ever hear why we're not letting paragliders operate in and out of the airport, we aren't denying them. The FAA has stepped in and said, you're so busy, this thing that came up was significant enough that we want to not have there be a problem. So no more paragliders at the airport as per the FAA.
Bob, could you just explain, how is it they have been operating?
They've been operating on the abandoned runway off to the west. They come in through the gravel road and through a gate, which they had the combination to that gate, which I've changed. But now they would come out there, put their flag up for the wind, and operate there in that abandoned runway area away from other traffic. So that has now been stopped.
Bob, how many people does that affect?
Uh,
What do we have on the property?
less than 10.
Do they have a place to go?
I don't know. I don't know. Along with that, it's not the same thing. This is different. We've had a couple, over the last year since I've been here, the gliders that operate in and out of our airport. I went up in one of the gliders. I got invited. Hey, Bob, do you want to come and go in the glider and see what it's like? Of course I do. And I threw up like crazy. Being a pilot, helicopter pilot, I was a little embarrassed, but at the same time realized it's different, and I got sick. And they thought that was funny, and I do too. But we've had some instances lately where they're parking out in the mud and then tracking the mud back down the taxiway and leaving it for us to clean up. We had recently someone hit a light and broke it, pretended that they didn't know they broke it until more questions were asked. Oh yeah, we know who did that, and we'll get, it's like, why are we out there in a car to begin with? So there's going to be some discussions about the glider traffic, and if we can come to an arrangement that meets everyone's needs. The first thing, though, is we can't be tracking mud and just leaving it. And
It sounds like for now they're not allowed, so isn't that,
Is there different?
we're talking about gliders.
oh, so.
A glider is towed up by an airplane, and then they
Okay,
let
so I
go.
didn't realize you transitioned
Yeah,
to something.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's kind of been the Wild West out there with parking cars by the runway, which is the safety area, and that shouldn't be allowed. It's a safety area, and there will be some people who will disagree because that's how we've always done it and that's how we do it, and I expect that pushback, but we'll see how that conversation goes.
So are they pulling them out of their hangar?
They pull them out of their hangar and then they take them over to the runway which is fine.
Yeah.
And then take off. They need a way to get them out there and to get them back.
But where's the mud coming from? The cars?
It's coming from the vehicles that they pull through off the pavement and into the dirt.
Oh, so they're not parking in the parking lot like regular people?
Correct.
They're parking in their hangar?
They're parking out by the runway in the mud
Okay.
sometimes, and then sometimes they're parking other places. But the times that they park out in the mud, I mean, it tracks mud. We've had several instances already this winter where my inspector will call me and say, Bob, I've got to get to class, but there's this mud everywhere. And it's like, why are they doing that? So,
Sounds like you're dealing with that.
yeah. I have been approached by an investor, and this investor is likely watching via YouTube. He's from Montreal, and I have signed a non-disclosure agreement with him, but he has given me permission to introduce the topic to you, and then maybe we can form a small committee, you know, in the constraints of the sundowner laws and those sorts of things. But however we proceed.
I would think our two economic development directors, this would be a perfect fit for them to work with you and have discussions to see
Okay.
what kind of a
I'll leave that-
proposal is coming.
Yeah. But he, in short, yeah, could we put that in so we can talk about what we're talking about?
There's a folder and then there's one file.
It should be a picture of, oh. Go.
Okay, I guess it's not.
Okay, we'll talk about it, and I'll describe what he is. So basically, he is representing a company that wants to come in and develop some land at our airport, which would be west of the center line of runway 35 and north of runway 28. So that farmland, I know it's hard. We were going to put up a picture, but we didn't. I do have a hard copy if you want to see it. Okay. It's a lot of land, and we own we own a lot of that land. It's outside of the fence. Here's the full page, and then an area of that north end.
Yeah, this general area, this is just a zoomed-in area.
Yeah,
of this.
okay. So let me just walk around and show each of you, just so we know where we're talking about. So here's our airport. We're talking about all this space up here. This is the main runway. We're talking about all this space right here. So here's our main runway, and we're talking about all of this right here. Okay.
So is airport land outside of the fence?
We own airport, we own land that's outside of the fence, yes. So it's all of this
Especially
stuff
want
right
to
up
take
here.
offline with two directors.
All this land right here. It's currently undeveloped.
I think it's okay for him to tell us what he's doing.
Okay. So, like I've said, he's had me sign a non-disclosure agreement. We've had some conversations. He wants to further the conversation with the board. I mentioned to him, I can't make the decision. We need to bring it to the board. He has given me permission to give you some information. And so that's what I'm doing today. In short, he has identified a need for large hangars because our airplanes keep getting taller, wider, bigger, and his company wants to come in and build large hangars. and lease them out. They want to put in customs so people could fly in from other countries at their expense, put in a customs so people could come in, go through customs, and then enter the country at our airport. He wants to pay at their expense to widen our runway to 150 feet instead of 100 feet that we're currently at. So, in short, this is the proposal that's been presented to me. Briefly, that's the explanation. And I said to further the conversation, we need to bring people in. We need to bring Lochner in, of course. We need to bring in our economic development and the board for approval. So he has given me approval to give you that much information. So we would need to form some sort of committee.
Yes, thank
To
you,
then
Bob.
reach out to him or have him reach out to the committee and then further the discussion.
Okay, and I like your recommendation, Mayor, that we form a committee with our two economic development directors and Bob. It sounds like Lochner would be helpful there. Is there someone from the board who would like to serve on that committee as well?
I'm happy to do so if you want me to.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeannie. Okay, so let's have that committee work on this issue and report back to us if there's
Okay.
action the board needs to take.
He mentioned next week would be a good time
Next week would be a good time for,
for him to start the conversation with the committee that's formed.
okay.
Is that,
Okay,
okay,
thank you very much.
okay. Should we just skip to the next thing, which is the lease
Yes, if
discussion?
that concludes the rest of your report. Go
Does.
ahead and move to the land lease review
Okay,
for 4A on our discussion items.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may ask a quick question.
Yes, please.
With regards to the FAA report, have you gone through most all of those, Bob, and cleared most of those that had deadlines?
yeah,
Good, except for the paint,
yeah, we've got the paint,
outstanding?
we've got the PAPI, control boxes that we need to move. Those two haven't been cleared.
Pappies have not been determined yet 100%, though, that they need to be moved, correct?
Correct. There's still
Okay.
haven't had a response yet, but believe they will need to be moved.
Still the thought process. And are we getting quotes on the striping?
Don't we have that?
Yeah, we have the bid,
Bids are in hand.
so
It's just waiting for weather.
as soon as it gets warm enough, then
How many companies did you get bids from?
four.
4, okay.
Yeah. It's ended up being great, lower than expected cost.
Approximately,
I mean, when does that ever happen?
Yeah, great.
Local share will be about 42,000, total project 140,000, so 70-30 split with the state.
It does not include this is focusing just on the runway at this time.
and not taxiways.
Not the taxiways. We just had a certain amount of money that we wanted to progress. We worked with the FAA to say, can we just do the runway, kind of appease them?
And Andrew's okay with that?
Yes, and I emailed Andrew
Yeah.
separately and said, again, we're just waiting on weather. So, and potentially, if we could do a Schedule 2 in the spring, and get the taxiway, we'd look at that option as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to the lease agreement. Do you have that email that I sent you?
I put it on flash drive, but PC is not.
Okay, okay. You guys, I gave each of the members up here a copy of what we've worked on. Brent Hughie, a lot of your recommendations are in this copy here. Basically some language cleanups, but I wanted to address, the last time we had a meeting, I wasn't here, but Marv Howling gave a presentation, and I'd like to thank him for his fairness as he discussed this topic. But he did have some points, and I have to say I tend to agree with some of them. So his first point was that the lease agreement that we approved last time focuses more, or penalizes more the small hangar owners. And I think he's right in that, because they have small hangars and a large land space around them. And so their lease amount went up more, 4 times more in some cases, than large hangar owners who have small, extra land around their hangar. So how do we solve this issue? He mentions his recommendation is that we just do away with that we just charge for the size of the hangar. We could do that, but when we started this lease discussion, we were 22 cents a square foot, and John and I had gone to the fall conference for airport operators, and we learned from the UDOT Aeronautics Department that the average for the state is 43 cents per square foot. And at the time we discussed that in our meeting here, we went, well, let's do 37 cents plus the land. So I guess if we want to do away with the land around the hangar, we could just go to the state average of 43 cents and then just do the land. Or we could do the 43 cents plus 5 or 10 feet of land around the hangar. Do you guys have some suggestions? Do we have some comments from? I want to do what's fair, and Marv had a good point here. And what do you guys think?
So my question is, who maintains the land between and around the hangars now?
The hangar owners.
They maintain it. They mow the grass,
Well, there's
whatever.
really no grass that grows between hangars, and if there is, it's minimal. I know our mower doesn't fit between most of the hangars. We have that big mower that,
Right.
yeah, so the hangar owners typically, but they're also parking vehicles and trailers and things around their hangars as well.
Which is not, we don't want that to happen, right?
Well, no. I mean, if you pull up your vehicle and you need a place to park, of course you need to park it somewhere. But storing trailers, no, that doesn't comply. It's the same as inside of a hangar. That is this space used primarily for aviation-related purposes? And if you've got a trailer that's just sitting out there that has nothing to do with aviation, that wouldn't necessarily be approved.
Okay, but right now they're not paying for that space anyway, right?
Right.
So it seems interesting to me that they're storing stuff on property that they're not currently leasing.
Okay.
But at the same time, they're not supposed to store stuff on it anyway, so it's sort of a half and half, it's like.
Right.
If they
And this-
don't pay for it, nothing could be on it.
Right. And that's why I'm bringing it up today for some guidance, for some, hey, what do we do here, guys? Because, what he said here, has merit. That the people being penalized the most are the small hangar owners. So what can we do? What are some ideas? I have an idea of, well, let's just do the 43 cents, which is the state average, and we can charge just for the hangar footprint, or the hangar footprint plus 5 or 10 feet on each side, instead of some of the small hangars, there's, almost 30 feet out in front of them or to the side of them, and we were going to charge for all that. We can't do that for these guys. It's not fair, I don't think. So.
It seems like that's a really bad use of our property, if you've got that much difference. But
These are the old hangars, though, that have been there for 50 years, and.
I think there's something different between the old hangars and new ones as we look forward. Because if you look forward and the lease is for an entire parcel or piece of that, as defined in, if we define that in our master plan and show what those parcels are, what happens is if we have them parsed out and planned out, and we have the next one that says, hey, you know what? I don't have a huge plane. I have a small plane. I just want a small hangar, but I'm the next one in line for a lot, and so they put a small hangar on a larger lot. that's a disadvantage to us, right? I mean, first of all, that's a disadvantage to us. To treat the old ones differently, I think is fair, because they don't have any control of what their hangar is or what it looks like now. But new ones, there is building standard that they could have 0 lot lines. They don't have to have space between hangars a lot of times. I mean, that happened in the airport I was at before. They had 0 lot line hangars, so that at that point, and the T hangars are 0 lot line hangars.
Yeah.
So we don't lose any space, and the efficiency gained, we have a limited resource. And at that point, that limited resource becomes an issue when they're only paying for the footprint they have, and then gaining 10 feet around on each side.
Right.
Or 20 feet or 30 feet. You look at some of those and you build a hangar and you say, well, could a hangar have fit there? So I understand his point about the older hangars.
Yeah.
But going forward, I think we have to make sure that the efficient use of the limited resource of land we have is effectively used going forward.
Yeah.
So if there's a difference, I understand that, but at some point, we want to have it built as efficiently as possible.
I agree with
in
you.
the next hangar.
Having visited with John Spanish Fork, and they have those 0 lot, it's like one hangar right up against the other, and they've got the firewalls between and all that. I get your point. But to solve today's problem, what do we do?
I understand. And the old hangars are a bit different. And I think, being able to come and say, hey, you know what, they've entered it at this footprint. I get that.
Yeah.
So
how many, just for the sake of discussion, how many old hangars fit into that category, old, smaller hangars? Because it would seem to me, to go with your comment, that as we plan the airport and do the master plan, if it's a large hangar site, a large hangar has to go there, not a small hangar.
but what's a large hangar? Is that from point to point? Is that
That's a
70 feet wide, 80 feet wide, 100 feet wide? The variation of that.
Well, it seems
Is
to
big.
be silly that we would take a 100-foot wide hangar pad and put a 50-foot hangar on it. It just doesn't seem appropriate. It doesn't seem to follow the master plan. The master plan should have small hangar sites and large hangar sites, and we shouldn't let small hangars be on large hangar lots, because that really does impact the airport negatively.
So Jeannie, you're saying we should incentivize the most efficient use of the land?
Absolutely. Or maybe not incentivize, require.
Require.
Yeah. But I think that we could have I don't know how many hangars, the small hangars or the older hangars category is. But perhaps we have a separate codicil to the lease agreement that affects only those hangars with respect to land. I don't know.
I think we could put in that it was the hangar space if it was built before whatever period of time. Maybe that's now. Maybe we put that in as, existing hangars are under one set and future hangars are under another. I don't know. How hard would it be, engineer, how hard would it be to lay out what that size is that is defined as usable space for hangar? Understanding storm drainage is not the same, and that can't be counted in the space. Access, there's some things that can't be, that aren't really leased by a hangar owner. What?
I'll get on microphone just to
Yeah.
answer that. So as far as laying it out, when it comes to master planning or layout plans in general, the idea of them is to think of them more, it's a guideline, not a blueprint, because the issue is what happens when someone comes in and they still want, if we call for simple reasoning right now, we'll say a small hangar is 50 by 50, a large hangar is 100 by 100, just for simple math right now. So the 50 by 50, often there's something behind it. So you can't go that 100-foot depth, but someone could come in and say, I want 100-foot wide, 50-foot deep. So in essence, they're using the space that would be two hangars, two small hangars. They're building basically two small hangars with the missing wall or no wall in between. So it could be laid out, but when you look at your planning documents, you want to use them to help guide that decision when an investor or builder wants to come up and say, I want to build smaller hangars. I want to build T hangars. Then you take the general layout of where things are going, or this area of the airport is set aside for smaller hangars. This area over here is set aside for larger / corporate hangars. And then you dial into you get into the actual designing of hangar and taxiway layouts. Because, it's one where we do lay things out within the plan, but we're not going to the very specifics of this is going to be a 50-foot by 50-foot building, because someone may have, in the most recent one we were involved in, someone's brother-in-law ran a steel company and they had off-the-shelf 45 by 50-foot buildings. So that's when it came to the actual designing of the hangars going on the ground, they built it in areas that were designed for smaller hangars. But when it came to the actual layout, that's where the building engineering came into play. So we can definitely lay things out, and that's kind of how the master plan is set up. Of these areas are explicitly set aside for smaller hangars, these for larger hangars. And where that really comes into play from the airport planning side is that there's different classifications of aircraft. There's Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. Group 1 are going to be your Cessnas, your Pipers. Group 2s are going to be your Citations and your larger. And then obviously Group 3, you get into the 737s kind of things. So that's a lot of what drives where hangars get built on size, is based off of the infrastructure that is put in by the airport, taxi lanes specifically, of different dimensions. Because the areas that are set aside for small hangars have narrow taxiways, 79 feet, versus the ones for the corporate or the larger hangars, wider taxiways or taxi lanes and object-free, so they're 115 feet wide.
So on that point though, if it's a larger hangar intended for a larger plane, it also has more infrastructure beyond the hangar itself.
Correct. Very.
So at that point, how do we balance between the needs and the investment? I guess that's the question I have, is how do you balance the need and investment back to those, to hangars? If you only have the hangar space, now the bigger the hangar, the more it pays, right?
Correct.
So I get that, but anyway, I don't know that I have a great spot, but I have seen that when they have a spot that you say, hey, I want to rent a 50 by 100 space. Well, at that point, it doesn't matter if I put a 90 by 40 hangar on it or a 50 by 100 hangar on it. To the airport, doesn't necessarily matter, because I'm leasing point-to-point space to yours 50 by 50. If that's not the standard hangar size I can get, but I'm still utilizing that space.
And that's where it comes to your decisions as the board as to whether you approve leasing that size space at that particular location. I mean, I know it's very, very difficult. Let me see if I can.
Joe, do you know how many old hangars we have?
I could count, but I can't. I don't know off the top of my head, but I definitely could count. The black hangars here represent the existing small hangar, and there's all areas, development of small hangars. There's the yellow and blue indicate places where small hangars could get built out in the future. The yellow would have to be taxi lanes that would have to be added in before those hangars can be built. But the example I was showing is someone wanted to build a large one. Here's what's shown as 4 hangars, so a couple 100 feet wide. But there's only so much room behind them that can be built. So this would be that scenario where if someone wanted to build 100 feet wide, they can't go that depth because there's a fence there. So yes, these 2 buildings here could be turned into one long rectangle. But what you want to avoid is over on this taxiway where it's the next group 2 size-wise. That is laid out to deal with servicing larger aircraft. So the wider wings.
Tiny squares there.
By size, I mean, this building, this little tiny square here would actually represent the largest building that would exist on the airport.
I'm talking about the one across the taxiway from that.
Here, these buildings are serviced by this taxiway. They would not,
I'm talking about the one that
We
goes out.
got the direction.
Talking about these guys. Are they big?
those
small?
are big.
Okay.
These would actually all represent
They look bigger
bigger than anything existing on the airport right now.
okay, they looked
By
smaller.
small, that's what I'm saying, unfortunately, only have the hard copy, but, so this would be one where if someone came and said, I wanted to build a 100-foot wide, 50-foot deep, hangar, over here would be an appropriate location, because it's gonna service small aircraft. While there would be space where this very large building is located, this area, the infrastructure that you're investing into this area is suited for large aircraft. So as the board, it would be recommended, say, I'm sorry, even though that space is open, that is not the appropriate use of that space
Right.
to do a smaller hangar. That's,
But you look at the real estate that's occupied by the smaller hangars, that cluster, and, you know, that's a substantial portion of the rentable real estate at the airport.
without future development. But there's no way, even back here, larger hangars could not be built because there's not the space for the planes to get back there from the runway over
Right,
here.
Right, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, I don't know whether we're cutting off our nose to spite our face by not utilizing the same metric for all of the property.
And this area is just as zoomed in of this particular area. This would be another development area. This is the parallel taxiway Charlie that goes out. Here's the parallel runway. It's running right here. This area shows lots of space for development for future large hangars. And then, but there's also space for, these are T hangars for lots of small aircraft with the common wall T hangars being developed there. So the plan does show the development spaces that help with both small hangar development here. These are large hangar developments.
But I'm still stuck on the fact that a quarter of our real estate is occupied by old, small hangars. And that if we don't get some sort of return for that property, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face in some ways. Because we still have to maintain it,
So I'll have to, correct.
and it still exists, and, I mean, if they tore them all down, we would have a different plan, perhaps, but.
And that is definitely something that can be considered. We did not look at hangar removal, I mean,
Yeah,
but through long
Right.
discussions, it's like, there's lots of space for future development before needing to look at redevelopment. I mean, it's not to say that in 40 years, that scenario would maybe change here 40, 60 years out, but there's enough different places for future growth that you can get growth without removal at this time.
So, just you have, how many airports are you the engineer for?
Total or ones that I personally oversee?
As a group that you'd be aware of is my
200,
point.
250.
So, what's the most common method for land leases to be, I mean, I look at subdividing, when you subdivide, there isn't any empty space. You have lot line to lot line, and from a subdivision, if we subdivided all of this out, we would have a property lines, you know, all the lines would be covered, all the land would be covered by one parcel or another. This way, we have a kind of basically a parcel that's the footprint of the hangar, but it's really common space around it, right? What's the most common you see as far as the 200 airports you've worked or seen with? What's your most common? Is it split?
It's split. It goes, historically, it has been footprint of the building. That's been the historic. That is, there definitely has been a shift in the last 20 years or so, looking at more of the lot. And that lot is often driven by local building codes and local fire departments, because they need to have so much space, whether it's for man access, be able to run a fire hose along the side of the building, or whatever. Like I said, it truly comes down to local building codes and local fire codes. There's what is the individual, or IBC, the International Building Code, or IBC. You know, there are certain sizes or standards set in there, but local municipalities do have the ability to set their own codes. So there's not that exact uniform on building spacing.
But I find it interesting, if you buy a 10-acre lot and you build a 1,000-square-foot house, you still pay for the 10-acre lot.
I guess the difference that you would have with that is you're purchasing property versus leasing it from the local government, in this case, leasing it from the airport authority.
Judd, I like how you pointed out how some of the locations have land around them that's not necessarily usable. What if, based on that, we looked at each individual hangar? Because each of these are being negotiated and written individually anyway, right? We're not doing a broad brush change to every lease.
Well, we were trying, I think the intent was to make them uniform, you know, make the lease.
Going forward, right? Going forward, as each one comes up for renegotiation or renewal, we would look at it. My thought is, what if we looked at each one individually and said, this one has extra space around it that's usable, we should charge them for that? Or this one has extra space around it, but it's not usable, we shouldn't charge them for that?
Oh, that's gonna be really arbitrary.
So, and that was one of the points that Marv Howling put in there was, it's arbitrary, who makes the decision, who measures, who, you know, and to his point, I think that makes it kind of confusing, and it's up to the interpretation of whoever's doing it that day. So,
I'd almost rather do the same for every footprint, and then those that have land around them, the older hangars that have a lot of land around them, well, I'm either footprint at 43, or I'm a little bit less for footprint, and then a lesser amount for land around it.
okay,
So it'd end up being probably the same amount of money.
okay.
That would be because I think we have to be consistent with everybody. We
Yep.
can't be negotiating one lot to another lot.
Jeannie, would you restate that? What is your proposal?
My proposal would be that we go with the 43 if we do footprint only, or we figure out a lesser amount for footprint, and an amount for land around.
So your proposal is that we have two options for determining
It's
the
an
lease
either
rate.
or. It's an either or.
It's
to me.
either,
Either we
only
do 43 for footprint only, or we do a lesser amount for footprint and then an amount for land around.
and
Could
how would we decide which of those scenarios we would go with?
No, we'd have to vote for one or the other. in
Can
my
I just,
opinion.
can I just make one more point?
Establish that for everyone.
So this discussion started based on the report from, the report.
Dr. Jones.
Thank you. we were at 22 cents a square foot. He wants us to become more self-sufficient, which I think most of us agree with, if not all. And so the 43 cents is more than double what we have been charging. So that alone, we're going to increase our rent, just on the footprint and 43 cents a square foot, we're going to double after the leases have kind of cycled through and everyone's re-signed, we're going to double the amount just on the footprint. So with that in mind, that makes it simple.
Yeah, so I said it's either or,
Okay.
so that would be my thought.
It's simpler to have the 43 cents, for example, to,
But it's gonna,
Have
I
a
mean,
set rate.
with the understanding that as those leases come due, there's gonna be an increase in that 43 cents. Because there's gonna be, it's not gonna be, everybody pays 43 cents when their lease is not up for
Yeah.
5 years.
That's right.
I have a question or proposal or maybe a thought about the rate. In thinking about the way that government agencies set rates for other things such as stormwater fee or a water fee or a sewage rate, normally the way those rates are established is there's an ordinance adopted that says we're going to charge this fee for this service, and then that fee is then adjusted from time to time by resolution. So the governing board or city council or whatever it is would then adjust those rates maybe annually, maybe every few years, but then the rate is adjusted for everyone, and and everyone pays the same rate.
But some people right now have a 10-year lease.
Yeah, I recognize that. I recognize that we have some people who are in a lease and we can't just go in and with a broad brush change everybody's rate. But I wonder if that's the direction we should start moving toward, so that everyone's being charged the same thing every year. And what I'm thinking is, we would say in the new leases, you will pay a rate as determined annually by the Airport Authority Board. And the Airport Authority Board would just every year say, okay, what's the market rate? What's the average across the state? What are our financial needs? We would
That
establish that
language is
rate.
in this,
It
this,
says it's right, said it
yeah.
right here. It's written in here, but the question becomes, so if you already have a lease for 10 years, can the rate increase every year? Or does it stay the same for that 10 years?
So right now, if you're under the old lease, it says it will increase by 2% each year, and it says 2%. So if you're at 22 cents a square foot this year, you're gonna be at 24 next year, or
Right,
whatever
right.
it may be. So, yeah, so if you're under an old lease, that's what it says. So as the leases expire and we re-sign, they would be under the current lease. Right now, I have nearly 30 leases that have expired that we're holding off on until we resolve this. So we're gonna be a quarter or a third of the leases are gonna be under the new lease.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my proposal would be that we do 43 cents for footprint. And it follows this with cost of living every year.
I'll second that.
Although, wait, we have this just as a discussion item, so we
Oh,
really
sorry.
need to make it an action item at our next meeting, I think. Again, to give people time if they want to offer more input. Yeah, I think we just need to make sure we keep our action and our discussion items.
Yes, so we have this on our agenda as a discussion item to review the land lease, and let's give input to our airport manager on what we'd like him to put into this lease document, and then we can put the lease document on our agenda for next time as an action item and approve it. That will give us time to review it, and Bob, if you could give us, before that next one, a version of this that is a red line version that shows what's changed in relation to the previous. So that-
Okay.
And let's make sure we make that available to the public as well, so that everybody can look at what is being proposed to be changed.
Okay.
So,
I mean, is this board, do they generally, think Jeannie's going in the right direction, just to give some guidance as to what direction we're going?
Now, previously, on the last one, if I'm not mistaken, we had a different rate for those that are on the flight line versus others. Is that still of the same interest and desire?
I think, I personally, I would prefer everyone be the same rate. I don't,
Regardless of where they're at on the airport?
yeah, I think that's gonna be the fairest, the most predictable. Just put everyone at 43 cents, instead of Summit, I think it's 37, and then the flight line at 47. We kind of split. I think if we just come to the middle and just do the state average for everybody, and then where the argument is, okay, how big are we charging? The footprint, how far away from the building. So I think it simplifies it.
Historically, the flight line was charged extra because they received additional services from the airport. For
Okay.
example, snow removal.
Okay?
The smaller hangars that are not on the flight line are responsible for removing their own snow
Yeah.
to the taxi lane. So that differentiated between the two was in a way to compensate the airport for the additional services they were providing.
What should we charge people on the flight line, John?
I don't know. We could look at that as a percentage of the, what was it, two cents extra that we charged before per foot?
Yeah.
As a percentage, so 10% more
Okay,
would be something to consider.
okay.
Yeah, I do like the idea of having a differential rate for people on the flight line. I think that's more valuable real estate.
Yeah.
Provides access, it's better location, has additional services.
And we have less of it.
So we had a proposal by Jeannie to give direction to our airport manager to bring us back a version of this lease that has the 43 cents per square foot of just the hangar space. And there was a second to that proposal. Let's make sure the majority of the board is okay with that before we give that direction to Bob. Are there any other thoughts about that concept?
Well, I like your additional flight line piece as well.
Okay.
I appreciate the thought process. I agree with doing the footprint. We don't want to get into, oh, I'm leasing up to, between the hangars and arguments, who got, are we over 1 foot, are we off a foot? I just think we retain that property that's not leased. We allow them to have the footprint. If there are excess areas and you're having someone that wants to use that for aviation purposes, I see no reason why we couldn't do, if there is 30 feet, why we couldn't do an addendum for that particular area. Make it the exception, not the norm.
Yeah, I know right now in the space that we're going to be developing, there's glider trailers parked there. They could go between hangars.
Exactly. Yeah. We
And
don't want to impede on the hangar users, but if there's excess space, then I think we ought to be able to figure out if there's a way to maximize.
yeah,
And we can deal with that. That's the exception. The other thing, Mr. Chairman, I know we're running out of time, but a couple of things I'd like to point out. Bob, as you look at this agreement under item C, number 2, it talks about in there that the lease may be terminated by either party upon written notice given at least 180 days prior to termination.
yeah,
So what I want to be careful is that is the 10-year termination. That there's no way that if someone is building a hangar and they're putting $300,000 to $400,000 into a hangar, there's no way for us to kick them out other than if they are in default.
right.
So I just want to make sure people are very clear on what that means to them. That if they're investing in that hangar, it is not our intent to have them build a hangar and then we're going to jettison them somehow.
Right, that would be for, they're not following the lease, they're.
Correct.
Whatever.
Yeah, in default. And we've got that provision, so we do have that flexibility.
Perhaps add the lease may be terminated for cause by either
Well,
party.
I think that's a different, I think that's H. I think this is saying, hey, if, once the 10-year term, rather than it being renewed, that at the end of that 10-year term, that you have 180 days between that time to be able to say, okay, you're 10 years up, or whatever the length of the term is. I think that's what it was intended for, I would guess, because it's not, default is under a different section.
If you look at the cost of the hangars going in, they're not getting any cheaper. And someone to say, hey, I'm going to do that for 10 years, and I'm good with that, but what happens after that? I think it's the assurance that, yes, we intend to renew the lease, but we're not going to do an automatic, but it's not our intent as a board, unless someone feels differently, that we're going to kick them out. We would have never built the hangar we did.
Right.
If we knew it was only going to be there for 10 years. So
I understand.
that's one thing. Then the other thing is, under the liability, I know that there was I apologize for missing last meeting, that they had indicated that, hey, we're concerned, why are you getting involved with our personal insurance? I don't know what that liability, that general liability policy is, and the cost of that. I would be interested in knowing what that is. But I can't lease any property without the lessor requiring me to have something to have them as additional insureds, and make sure that we are protected if there's an incident or an accident. Then what that does is, it's not protecting their property. That policy that we're asking for here is not replacement of their property. That is just if there's a liability, general liability claim against us for something that occurred there, then we would have additional insured coverage under that. And so that if there's an incident, everyone gets named in it, and that would be one policy that would cover, so all the parties would look to that.
Okay.
I don't know what the cost of that is, but we ought to look at it. If we're going to require that, I think we just need to be cognizant of the hangar owners and what does that really mean to them. And I suspect we could reach out to some local insurance folks and find out what that is, just so that we understand what we're asking. I don't think that's an unreasonable provision. I saw his comments. It's a great question that he's asking, but I don't think it's outside the lines.
Okay, I agree.
Okay,
If
so,
we're going to approve this lease, and we need to stop kicking the can down the road, and I say that not in a negative way, we want to make sure it's right before we sign something, but I feel like we ought to just look at all those provisions and make sure we know exactly what it is that we're asking of the hangar lessees.
okay, so that's a proposal for more information, but not necessarily to change that section at this point.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, so we have a couple of proposals for modifications to this lease agreement. Are there other changes that you wanted to highlight to us today?
Nope.
Okay. Are there, as we're sending Bob to finalize this document and bring it back to us next time, is there anything else that the board would like to propose be changed this time? Okay. It sounds like you have some direction. Do you have any questions from us?
Nope.
Okay. So we'll look forward to seeing that as an action item on our agenda next time, and hopefully get that finalized. That brings us then, did you have anything else in your report or anything
Nope,
else
I'm
to
good.
report? Okay, thank you so much, Bob. That brings us then to item 4B on our agenda, master plan update. Judd?
So, you actually just saw a couple of pages out of the airport layout plan, which is one of the large portions of the master plan. Where we're at now is the entire thing is written and completed in a draft state. The technical advisory committee's been reviewing it, and hopefully get back any particular comments soon. Probably have a discussion with Bob where there's a potential for development on the north side. And we do show large hangars in that specific area. Again, it's a guideline, not a blueprint, so is what's shown there adequate, or do we need to stretch them out more? I mean, it's showing that this area is set aside for large-scale development on the north end of the runway on the west side on the existing property. So just kind of finalizing those things out, but once everyone is in agreement, then we'll make whatever changes are needed, and then the last step will kind of have a public hearing. Basically, probably come in here, we can just set up boards, be here to answer any questions for the public. At that point, we'll submit it to the FAA, where they have been giving formal approval of all of the different steps along the way. They then will take the final product and go for their formal final approval of that. And that's an unknown on timeline. 3 years ago, or 6 years ago, a master plan would take about 6 to 8 weeks to get that FAA approval. The last 3 years, they've been averaging 6 months. So it's unknown. It all depends. I know that they have been hiring some new staff, so hopefully that'll help or speed that back up.
Judd, you mentioned that the Technical Advisory Committee was reviewing the draft report. Could you remind us who serves on that committee?
There's the email. I know John Ryan, Brett,
We have Paul Lindhart from Logan, Public Works Director.
Public Works Director. So those are all the people that have been sent. I know Aaron also, so it's kind of. Josh Campbell was added along the lines as well. So the idea is just as many, well, not as many eyes, because you can't have too many cooks in a kitchen, but to have a broad set of eyes with differing opinions and ideas.
So our economic development directors are not on that committee?
No.
No?
Committee,
Okay.
no.
Because I'd love to have them look at it as well, from an economic development perspective, if they would look at it. Okay, thank you for that update. Is there anything else to that update?
For the master plan, no.
Okay, and that brings us then to item 4C on our agenda, the 2025 capital projects plan, and Connor's going to report to us on that.
Morning. So yeah, 2025 is pretty exciting. We have 4 projects. The paint project, which we previously discussed, has been bid on, just waiting on weather. So essentially when it's not freezing, then we'll be able to paint. Paint will last longer that way. Better use of the money. Then we have the taxi lane kilo project. So that's a federal and state project. And the good news with the federal projects is it's a 95, 2.5, 2.5 split for these next 2 years. So it's good to squeeze in that project. It's looking to be around 1.1 million total project costs. It's an estimate. So the local share on that would be around $30,000, depending on bids. And then another project we have is snow removal equipment. So as we discussed with Bob, airport just has a need for new snow removal equipment. We're estimating around $250,000 for that. Again, it's federal and state. So the local share would be around $7,000 for.
What type of equipment are you talking about for $250,000?
Bob, as far as.
Is that a brush? Is that a truck? Is it a blower?
I think it was a brush broom.
We're looking at the broom.
Okay. Just,
That's pulled by existing equipment. That's not a self-propel ride, so it's just pulled by existing equipment.
Yeah, we would be able to attach that broom to the front of our front loader.
Thank
It
you.
would also be good for removing fog, as we talked about at the beginning, but for last night's snow, it would have been perfect. Light, fluffy, dry snow would have been great.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Third project would be the Taxiway Charlie project, and that is going to be split just state and local, so an 80-20 split. Looking somewhere in the realm of $800,000 project, so local share looking around $150,000. And then the PAPI project as well, I just have not heard back from the FAA. Emailed several people, and it's more than likely, I would say, a 90% probability that we are going to have to move the PAPI boxes, or the power control unit for the PAPIs, on both ends of the runway. So I will follow up with the FAA on that, but that's all the information I have. So, any questions on 2025 projects?
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you very much, Connor. Appreciate that. And that brings us then to item 4D on our report. And this is not anything that requires action unless there are questions, but we talked about we've talked about providing a financial report, and each month that'll be provided to the board, so that you can see that. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to bring those up. But that's just a reminder that that financial report is being provided to you each month.
Is that just by email, or are you gonna provide it at the meeting?
Was it emailed?
It came by email.
Yeah.
Will we be reviewing it at all, or just
We,
acquiring it?
That's up to the board. If you'd like to do some type of review each month, or if you'd like us to have our financial analyst from our finance department come and give a summary, or have our manager point out any changes, that's up to the board. If you'd like any of those things, we can accommodate that.
I would personally like it if, maybe next meeting, the financial person came and just went through the budget with us, just for so that we have a good understanding of what all the different pieces are.
That's,
And, then I don't think they have to do it again,
okay.
just once.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that next time. We'll put that on our agenda next time to do a review of the budget. And
Thank you.
that way everybody is familiar with what's in there, how much, what categories, all of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. Okay, that brings us then to item 4E, open items. Are there any board members who?
Barron has something.
Aaron?
Barron.
Or Barron? Yes, Professor Barron.
Thank you very much. I'll keep this short. I got a couple extra for the two new board members. For those that don't know, we were approved last summer to be able to host an airport open house next June on the 28th. I just want to give a quick update on some of the planning, what we're doing. The Division of Aeronautics is going to host their one-day conference on Friday, the 27th at Utah State. So we'll be hosting an event up there. We'll be having hands-on workshops in the maintenance lab. EAA is going to bring an airplane out. We're going to have some drone workshops, have the quad available, hopefully our simulator up and running at Utah State. So it'll be a one-day event up there. Friday evening, we'll have a reception at the airport for the annual awards, and like a hangar hop style with live music. So that's going to be a hands-on training and a wonderful event that leads into the airport open house on that Saturday. We're going to continue to work with Bob and make sure we can coordinate that. I've been working with Scott Weaver and some others on the committee. Thank you for the time with that. We've secured Bob Evans as an air boss. The FAA has changed some of the requirements. And so I have his bio and can give it to anybody, but he is an approved air boss, lives in Colorado, came recommended by Brad Wurston and others. So right now we've got Brad Wurston, Barry Hancock, Carl Gashler with Red Thunder, and Danny Sorensen committed to be performers. We're reaching out to the Guard, the Army, the Air Force, to see if we can get F-35 up here. And we've got statics confirmed with Arizona Commemorative Air Force and invited those in southern Idaho and some others. So not to go through all the details, but we're moving forward with some of those operations. We're pretty excited about that. In 2015, the Airport Authority Board provided $2,000 in support, and a lot of this was in support from the airport manager and helping provide porta potties and those other support facilities that the airport needed. We worked with the county to be able to get the barricades. We need to coordinate them. There's some new requirements about having on-scene law enforcement as well as medical, whether it's just an ambulance or a paramedic during that portion. The proposal is to open up the airport at 9, and then from 10 to 1500 be NOTAM closed, with the understanding that at noon we would open it up for any departures for about an hour. And so there'll be some performers from 10 to noon, and then 1300 to 1500, 1 to 3 p.m., at which time the open house portion of the air demonstrations would end and give people about an hour to finish getting off the ramp. So that's kind of the proposed outline, very similar to what was done in 2015, but we're anticipating, a large, since it's been a while, and this is off Hill Air Force Base, and Battlefield Sky Park is not doing an open house. So this will be the only open house in northern Utah next year. So any questions for me in the coordination for this event?
Aaron, would you remind me of the date again?
28 June, it's the last Saturday of June, 28 June of 2025. With Friday the 27th being at the Logan campus for hosting the Aero Conference.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you so much, Professor Barron.
And the last thing is we're going to be meeting on Friday, the 10th at the airport at noon. So if anybody's interested in coming to that meeting or serving on the committee, please let me know. But we want to make sure that this is a community event. And so again, I'm not wearing my Utah State hat. I'm wearing, with the Division of Aeronautics, a hat that we're coordinating with a group of folks to help put this on. We appreciate the board's support. Congrats on the new appointment. Thank you, John, for your years of commitment to this airport. And for all those that are here, we're really excited about this opportunity to showcase aviation to the community, to bring people to the airport, which was always one of the goals of making sure that the airport gets the visibility.
So Baron, what time on the 10th?
On the 10th, noon, Friday the 10th at noon. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Professor Barron, for your work on that. Are there any other open items that members of the board would like to report on?
Just a quick update. On the subcommittee of David and Brett and myself, we've had some very positive meetings with the university. They've expressed that the Part 139, continuing that is very important to them. So we're just having some positive discussions, nothing finalized yet, but again, just wanted you to know those discussions are moving forward in a good way. You want any other update on that?
Thank you for that update, Mayor.
With regard to the tower, Ryan and Bob and I have formulated, per the direction from the board, a set of specifications which have been sent to 3 contractors for the repair of the tower, and anticipate their response back in the next 10 days or so.
And then we were also going to get a bid just to take it down. Was there also?
That's part of the
Okay,
alternate.
that's part of the options, right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, thank you for that report. Any other reports or open items from the board? Okay, hearing none, that would conclude our business in our open session today. Number 5 on our agenda notes that our next scheduled board meeting will be Thursday, February 6th at 8:30 a.m. in this room. And that brings us to number 6 on our agenda, which is a closed meeting. I would entertain a motion from the board now that we enter into a closed meeting to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
I so move per Utah Code 524205 that we close the meeting for purchase, exchange, or lease of real property discussion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second that we close the meeting for the discussion of real estate. Is there any discussion about that before we vote? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? All right, so at this point, we could actually go into the conference room here, or we could ask everyone to leave.
Well, again, we need Janine here to take minutes, so maybe it's just easier, because we do have to have minutes in a closed
Yeah,
session.
yeah.
So maybe if we just stay here and ask
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, let's make sure everything's, if we could have the 3 of you stay, actually. Okay. That would be helpful.
Oh, thank you.
And I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good, good, good. Oh, that's great. Thank you.
See you, buddy. I was just about to check that. The answer is yes.
Thank you
So I look forward to it. So you've heard the scale down.
for the one-day.
Okay, we are reconvening the Logan-Cache Airport Authority Board meeting after closing the meeting. And before we get to our adjournment, was there anything else from board members?
Yeah, just following up on the board minutes from last time. So, the airport emergency plan, you guys, in the board minutes, it says you reviewed that, made some changes, you had some committees that got together. Does that need board approval?
So we just reviewed our current, we didn't make any changes to it.
Okay.
We just reviewed it as required by the FAA. We have to review it with those that are concerned each year, and that's what we did. We just reviewed it, we read it line for line, and, if this happens, this is what resources are available, and if X, Y, or Z happens, then,
All we
Got
do
you.
is review it.
Just review, no changes.
Right.
And then under leading edge's expansion and their site request, it said that we approved leading edge lease expansion and new site for the maintenance shop. Do we need to further clarify that? Is there something we as a board need to do on that?
I think my interpretation of what we did at that point is we gave direction to our manager to negotiate the lease. I think Ryan made the motion initially on that. And
Correct.
his motion was that, if I remember correctly, that we gave direction to our manager to start the negotiation process. But it was pointed out at that point that there were many steps that had to happen still before a final approval could happen. For example, Jeannie mentioned they'd have to go through the planning committee, planning commission with the city. So I know some questions came up about what exactly our action meant when we voted at that meeting.
I think ours is a support of the process to move forward.
Yeah.
I don't think we are the end approval of a building, obviously, but allowing the lease to be expanded and that to be done through apparently the footprint, so.
And relocating the other one.
And relocating the other one to a
And
new
those
lease.
footprints were included in the attachments.
Yeah.
So as the maker of the motion, Ryan, you're providing some more clarity on what your intent was.
We were intending to move forward, is that not?
I just want to make sure they're not leapfrogging someone else on the wait list for a hangar to say, oh, well, we found them placed for a hangar to take their existing, to put it in that compound area, if you will, to move that and leapfrog anyone else that was in line to having a hangar assigned to them. So I just want to make sure we're not holding anything up as a board, that Scott and Leading Edge Aviation can be moving forward if in fact.
He's come to my office and we've discussed this. He is moving forward. He just wanted to make sure that I had the understanding of what he's moving, where he's moving it. He did bring up, the lenders and people that are concerned that way. We want a long lease. Can I do a 50-year lease? I don't see any reason why we couldn't do a long lease, as long as, the ability to raise,
Sure.
keep up with the market value of land lease. So we've had that discussion.
And the land area that he's proposing to move his existing building to over there by the building he bought with the tower, is he already leasing that land, the parking lot? I don't remember. So that's an argument
The
then.
parking lot does include, is included in his lease.
If I may, to alleviate jumping the line of somebody, one of the projects this year is taxiway Kilo, and the development of that is explicitly to generate space for hangars of that size. So obviously, if someone's waiting for a 40 by 40 hangar, they're not going to get this spot anyway because it's a large hangar. The development that you are currently doing, or will be doing this year, explicitly brings those spaces online.
It would be nice for us to, at some point, review the lease, or review the list, so that we know who has what.
Yeah.
So I've been talking with Janine. We're updating that list. It's going to be online shortly.
Okay, so that will go online. I saw the request to make it public. I didn't know if they would come in and request from you or, and then there was it was Mr. Milne had made a presentation last time about a grant of $20,000 and said, okay, it's up to the board authority how we're going to spend that money. Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
So is someone looking at that? Bob, are you looking
That's
for?
where your salary's paid out.
Wait a second. Was that his Christmas bonus? Is that what I just heard? So it says the Airport Authority Board needs to make the decision as to how the funds will be spent.
Basically,
I haven't started anything on it. No, I haven't done it.
and I think it was 18,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
What can it be used for?
anything on the airport. Well, that's not quite right. I think.
Economic development.
I think he said it cannot be used to repair the tower.
The hope from that committee was that it would be used for economic development purposes, but I think it was given with no strings attached is
Yeah.
Okay.
my memory.
So maybe we could put a new sign out front or something like that.
Did you have any other follow-ups?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Was there anything else from any board members before we adjourn? Okay, seeing nothing, we will be adjourned until our next meeting on February 6th. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.